I love City Image.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of the City Image Podcast. I'm here with a lovely cast of characters.
Lovely.
To my left, well, first of all, I'm here. Rich the husband, in the building, y'all. I missed you guys. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm finally settling in.
You didn't leave me beat the step to though.
I didn't.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yo, I didn't.
Every time.
It wasn't
Oh
Amazon
my
Prime.
gosh.
That's why. Low key, when I order something that's not Amazon Prime, I feel like I'll never get it.
Yeah, that is real.
I'm just
so
like,
real.
it'll get here next year.
It's spoiled. They spoiled
I'm
us.
spoiled. Talk to the people, Danny.
What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, the creator.
With the little carrot top bun. We appreciate that.
Appreciate the carrot
It's
top
like a
reference.
samurai bun.
Samurai bun.
Carrot top. That's not a good reference.
Oh man,
I'll take it.
He's the second prettiest person here.
Ooh. I appreciate that.
You meddled though. You're on the podium.
You meddled.
Metal. And I mean, hey, I don't mind. So who else did we got?
Who we got? Oh, I'll go third.
Yeah, word.
You go third?
Yo, Bryant Theological Giant in the building. Back like I never left.
Word.
Shout out to Swoop.
Third hottest.
Third hot.
Third
I'll take it.
You on the podium.
I'll take the bronze, man.
Word.
You know what I'm saying?
I'm just here because I have a good voice. I have a good personality.
Oh, word. Much love.
Oh, we need that, man.
But we have someone special here. Not new though. We have a friend of City Image.
And she's coming in
That's what we
first
are.
place. She's in first place.
She's definitely in for gold medal
Yeah.
beauty
Stop it.
on our panel
Oh my
today.
God! Check the hair.
It's just
Check
'cause
the
of the hair,
Y'all see
guys. It's just the
You
hair.
see the hair? That's
hair.
what's
It's
up.
just the hair.
Nah, I forgot. See, I wasn't here when you recorded. So, what is your name? You're Lourdes
I am Lourdes the Principal,
There you go.
Principal.
There you go.
aka the woman with principle.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, I remember
like
her.
that.
She was on the City Image takeover, but she's back now
I'm
with the
back.
fellas.
Word.
So, is this your third?
Second.
Second.
No,
Second.
second.
Yeah.
Number 2.
Man, this is awesome. Well, guys, you guys are in for a treat today. Today, we're going to be talking about just our education system. But before we get into that, I really think it's something we need to address, which is this Black Panther phenomenon, breaking records in terms of the pre-orders. I'm seeing all kinds of memes. I'm seeing people
it's such a
picking
good-
out their
Yeah,
outfits
celebrities are going in.
to go to Black
Yes.
Panther. People who never would have gone to any kind of Marvel production are
Yes.
making plans. My mom, who don't even know what a Black Panther is.
She only know about the '60s Black Panthers.
Word. Like halfway through, she might be like, yo, this is demonic and leave. But she's going. So, yo, have y'all got tickets? Like, what's
Early.
the plan?
Yeah.
Tickets already purchased. Whole girl group got outfits.
There you
We're
go.
coordinating.
Oh, yeah.
Like we
The
are
outfits on
in
deck.
here.
Wow.
Head wraps, cocoa butter,
That's amazing.
shea butter. We're all in there.
Yo,
Goodness.
this is gonna be amazing. I mean, it's just like I'm just so happy to be Black, like unapologetically. Like,
Yeah.
yes, we're gonna revel in this, and there's not gonna be an ounce of shame.
No,
There's
like I just want to be ignorant Black, like just like black, blackity black. That's
Blackity
it.
black, and I'm
Whole
Black,
crew.
y'all.
We're here, Black
Black.
Panther, just Black.
Yeah. So, you know what's funny? Somebody online was just like, yo, like Black people are going in about Black Panther. And I thought about it for a second. And as I watch what my daughter watches, like what she consumes content wise, I realize white people have this moment all the time. Like there's so many shows where she's watching and there's no people of color in the show whatsoever.
Absolutely.
And so it's just like, man, like we're going crazy because this never happens for us.
Never
Like,
happens.
We never have something where it's just like, yo, it's not, yo, but did you see that Black dude?
Yeah.
Did you see the Black girl?
Yeah.
It's like, nah, that's the whole cast. Everybody Black.
Yeah, and it's a positive representation of us in the media, which is
Yeah.
also hard to come by.
Right.
A king who is also a hero.
Right.
Who's going to take care of his country, you know what I mean, and rule in righteousness.
Yeah.
Hey.
Almost
You
like
talking about
Christ
Jesus?
figure, you know? I'm just saying.
Bring it back, y'all.
We come on, can we get images of Black, especially Black men like that?
Yeah.
Come on.
Wakanda's heaven, y'all.
Wakanda is heaven.
Advanced technology.
May Wakanda be on Earth as it is in heaven.
Right. Yes, that's
It's
a
so
word.
crazy. And then like just with the whole story behind it, Wakanda being the most technologically advanced country in the world
Absolutely.
of their world, and it's just like, man, like
Yeah,
that's something you would never think of when associating with like an African nation.
exactly.
Well, actually, historically,
That's
African
what we were.
nations were more
That's great.
technologically
That's good.
advanced than
That's
Europe.
good.
So this is actually an accurate telling of,
Right.
of
Okay.
history as
Okay,
opposed to
Lord as the
just
principal
fantasy.
teaching us.
Yeah,
Word.
you know.
Drop that
She got to.
knowledge.
We
Drop
need
that
it.
I mean,
knowledge.
Mansa Musa, like he's real.
Yeah.
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 But unfortunately, I think, we've just been showered with images of like blow darts and spears
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
loincloths that we forget that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I got tickets. I will probably see this movie, depending on who I go with, maybe about 3-4 times.
Yeah. I mean, I have Movie Pass, so I can go at least once a day.
Yay.
Because the scenes that I've seen of Black Panther, the character in Civil War? No,
yeah, Civil
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 War
War.
were incredible.
Incredible.
Gosh.
So
Incredible.
I'm here for all of it. This is the first movie where I've actually done a blackout. I have not watched one trailer, read one
Wow.
article. I don't even know like any scene from the movie.
I wish I could do
whatsoever.
that, bro. I can't.
That's some.
I have
so
no
hard.
self control when them trailers be dropping, man. Oh,
Dang,
Press play.
so-
but yo, you're gonna there's like a couple of scenes though that they've had in a couple of trailers
Yeah.
that I know when I see it in the theater, I'm like, oh god, I've seen it already. Like it's gonna take away some of that. So it's
Got
good
you.
that you're gonna have some like
Yeah.
some scenes that have been repetitive in the trailers. That's like it's gonna be fresh for you. So I'm happy.
Yeah, I'll
for
be the
you.
only one in the theater like, yeah.
Yeah,
And
everybody's
I'm
like, oh,
okay,
we saw that. We saw that.
Nope,
already.
it's gonna be like a Beyonce album. I'm just gonna
There
play
you
it
go.
over
There
and
you go.
over and over. I don't care how many times I've seen it. Like that's it. I'm gonna react every
Yes.
time. This movie just
Yeah.
looks
Yeah.
insane. And
I
I'm
agree.
So excited.
Visually, all that. The other thing is, I'm seeing it in a white neighborhood theater, so I also need to have the black theater experience. But all that's
Yes.
sold out right now. But I know once it dies down, I can get that later. So I have to do both, and
Yeah.
so
Right.
that's at least 2 times for me.
Well, I mean, the first time you're actually gonna hear the words of the movie, so you'll really get to like know, yep, this is what happened. And then when you go back and experience it with everybody else, it's like, oh, the ad libs are gonna
Yeah.
be there.
Yes. So this might even be one to purchase, and I haven't purchased a movie in like 7 years. So
Yeah. Okay.
Netflix, yeah.
like my daughter needs to see this. So
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, man, this is one that we pass on from generation to generation.
we can pass it on. It's an heirloom, family heirloom.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's gonna make one of those as a black film. You have to see this.
Yeah.
Or you're ostracized from the community.
So,
Right.
Yeah.
so what was the version of that before this?
Man, I mean, you got shit. You know what I'm saying? Your Boys in the Hood. What are the you know what I'm saying? The movies
Oh,
that
like
you-
Friday.
Friday. You know what I'm saying? Like the
Barbershop. I
What, you know what I'm saying? The
Yeah.
stuff you have to
I
see
feel
as
like
a black person.
low key Get Out is on that list.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That movie was really good. Didn't we
So-
talk about that like on our second episode?
Oh,
We're
wow.
coming up on a year, but we're gonna keep that a secret.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, listen, y'all. We really hope that you guys go out, get your tickets to go see Black Panther. We will be having a full episode later in the month
we're gonna
about
digest
Black.
it.
We'll have a whole Black Panther
We're gonna
episode
digest it.
lined up for you guys. Don't want to say too much. Stay tuned for that. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we will be unpacking just the brokenness of education in America, talking a little bit about school to prison pipeline and ways that Christians and those of faith can get involved and help break the chains in the system.
What's going on, guys? This is City Image, and this is Daniel, the creator.
And it's your boy, Young Flatbush.
And Bryant, the theological giant. We just want to thank you so much for all the support that you've shown us thus far. But we just wanted to ask you guys to remember, if you haven't already, to like us, share the content if it's blessed your soul, subscribe, review us on iTunes. We're also on Google Play.
And if you want to keep up with us on social media, you can check us out on Facebook, City Image. We're also The City Image on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want to get in contact with us, you can hit us up at cityimagepodcast@gmail.com.
And again, thank you for the support.
Peace.
And we are back. Ladies and gentlemen, you are in for a treat. We're here with a very experienced educator and personal friend. It's Sister and Lourdes the Principal. Lourdes, if you could just break down for the people who don't know you, just what your background is in education and just kind of your experience in urban education.
Sure. Lord, when you said experience, I'm like, oh, that sounds like old. But no.
Get your resume.
Right. Yeah, I am 9-year educator. I've been in education for the last 9 years, worked in urban education settings. Right now, I am a dean of school culture at a charter school in East New York. I have worked in so many different settings. I've worked in every grade, K to 12. I've taught English to high schoolers. I taught ELA to middle schoolers and did, grammar with the babies. I taught in private school. I did some student teaching in public school. I never really worked in a traditional public school setting. I spent the last 6 years working in charter schools. I did 3 years as a kindergarten teacher, and then I transitioned now to a dean. And I mean, it's been a fun ride.
So it's safe to say you're well qualified to speak on this issue.
I got a little credentials and stuff. I'm in here.
That's good.
I does this education thing.
I feel you. Now, Lourdes, was that what you always wanted to do?
Absolutely not.
Wow. So what was the plan before education?
The plan before education. So I went to Virginia State University, HBCU in Petersburg. Shout out to VSU. And I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I got into college by God's grace, and I was like, okay, I'm here. I did that step. And then when I graduated, I just was like, life, I don't know. So I had an English degree and came back. So I'm like, what am I going to do with this? And I just happened into editorial. I worked as an editorial assistant for a while, and I felt like maybe I want to be editor, do like a fashion editor or something like that, stay in that like creative realm. I did that for 2 years, and then God was just like, no, this is not what I have for you. Like, I'm going to pluck you out and put you in education. And I never liked kids. Never.
How about now?
Still working on it.
Still accumulating.
I don't like them neither.
Still process.
Man.
I love them, but I
must
just
love to the
wasn't,
children.
I wasn't into kids. But now that I'm working with them, like, I'm so surprised at what the Lord will do. And
Wow.
It's amazing.
That's what's up. So now that you're 9 years in the game, you're in these urban education spaces. You've also done non-urban. And so in your opinion, what are needs that are in the urban space that educators need to be aware of versus just education in, more majority culture spaces?
Right. When you say urban education, that can be somewhat of a pejorative sometimes, because usually when people say urban education, they mean poor Black people in the hood. And like urban education is so much more vast than that. Like it's not just poor communities, or it's not just, impoverished communities. It really is just more like city dwellings where like you can have a range of socioeconomic groups of people. You can have a range of class. You can have a range of race. But in my experience, most of the urban settings that I've been in with charter schools, they tend to be in really disenfranchised neighborhoods. They tend to be in neighborhoods that are of lower socioeconomic status. But very often when you get in those spheres, there are a lot of white educators that are coming in because they really have this notion of like, oh, I want to save the Black babies, and I want to help the poor cities. And when they get there, everyone really has this assumption that, oh, it's these poor Black kids, and I'm helping. They don't know nothing. So very often there's this the need, the sense that there's a deficit of the students that are in these communities, and that's actually not true. Like, whatever educators that are coming in, whoever's coming in to help, like really should be coming in looking at it from an asset-based mindset. Like, these are thriving communities. These are people who come from families with really great values. So any educator or anyone that's seeking to come in and help in urban education really should check their mindset and look at the community that they're going into from an asset-based sense.
So just following up on that, though, how do you think it changes the way a person is an educator when they come in with the mindset of asset-based versus like savior-based, like I'm coming in to like save the people? How do you think that shuttle shifting mindset changes the way the educator approaches the student?
Yeah, I mean, even in the way that you talk to the child or you talk to the person's parent, if you think like, oh, sweetness, you don't know anything, like I'm just gonna I'm gonna help you, like you come from more of a condescending sense in the way that you deliver your instruction, or even the amount of work that you put in and the expectations that you have for children. Like you might think like, oh, poor Johnny, he's poor, so I won't require too much of him, he can't do it, so you won't necessarily put rigorous content in front of the child, or you won't necessarily push them to be their best because you feel like, oh, he can't do it, I need to help him to get the basics. But if you look at him as like as a child who has assets, who has things, who already has skills that you're pouring more into, you will put more work into it and you will expect more of that child. And then for their communities, you'll look at their parents as partners. You won't look at their parents as like, oh, oh, she don't care. Like you'll have a better sense in the way that you approach people.
That's good. So, I mean, it's essentially upholding the full humanity of the student in the sense that you think that this person is a fully capable individual.
Absolutely. When you look at someone from an asset base, you look at them from their full imago Dei. And if you're like, yeah, this person is made in the image of God, this person has things, this person has character, this person has mental ability, like I can see them in that way and I can pour into them knowing that I can push them to be their best self.
That's good.
It's good. And you don't feel like that's happening right now?
Not always. Absolutely no. Not always. Because if you work in a neighborhood like Brownsville, like, yes, there are a lot of projects. There are a lot of, people who are of lower socioeconomic status. So very often if you come in, you're not aware of that community. You'll only look at it from the poor aspect. But you won't realize that Brownsville is actually a thriving community where they have their own centers. Like there are a lot of community grassroots things that are happening in Brownsville that you'll think like, oh, it's just these little project kids that are coming into the school. I gotta help them. They parents don't know nothing. They don't have anything. But actually there's like community activism, grassroots. Brownsville's a community that takes care of its own. So if you're not thinking about that, you'll treat the child disrespectfully because you're thinking like he comes from nowhere and nothing.
Yeah, it's good, man.
Wow.
Lourdes, I want to piggyback on two things that you said. Just talking about, so what I heard was there's this idea of losing the individual. And a lot of times I'll see people who are, come from majority culture, and it almost seems like it's like, no, I understand the struggle. I understand what black and brown children go through. And so it almost becomes this like branding that everyone who is a minority in their space automatically has this stigma attached to them where it's just like there's no more diversity. And I remember hearing someone on a panel was just like, they told my child, like, yeah, he's got, just a single mom at home. So, I understand the struggle. And it's just like, not everybody who grows up with a single mother is having the same experience. Absolutely. And so there's like a loss of the individual in this idea to try to quote unquote understand what the problem is.
Right.
And so I guess like, man, how education wise, like, is there anything that's happening in the system that fosters more of an individualistic approach to children's struggle versus taking this idea of there being a systemic problem and making it a brand that they put on the child?
I mean, that's a big question. Like, I want to unpack that. Like, taking it back to like the Black Panther issue that we're talking about, like, for a white person looking at TV, they don't ever really have to think about their race because they're constantly represented in positive ways and in different ways.
Right.
Like, whiteness is never presented as monolith. Like, there's all this different type of white. But very often, blackness is presented as monolith. Like, oh, no, all black people are the same. Y'all are all poor. You all come from single parent households. And even if you do have a single parent, like your mom's on drugs or y'all don't, your house is dirty. Y'all don't have money. Like, there are these caricatures that are presented of blackness. So if that is all that you know or see or experience of blackness, and you as a majority group are now coming in and you have these ideas of this monolithic type of black, very often the curriculum is based off of that. Blackness is presented in the same way, whereas like there's all these varying degrees of whiteness that you see, but your blackness is shown through the same light. Now, to combat that, like, there are culturally responsive programs that are happening in education. Like, there are different types of curriculum where they try to take the scholars' culture, try to take in their home life and incorporate that into the culture, and then having like Black History Month not just be this just a month or something that's on periphery, like we only learn about Black people in February. Like, no, you actually read passages that include Black heroes and include historical figures throughout, and even like the way language that we use with children, like affirming language, making sure that you're speaking positively and affirming them and their character, so that they're being built up as people and not just like stuck in these little boxes of caricature.
Wow, that's big.
It's good.
Yeah, and the second thing I wanted to kind of unpack from what you said earlier was this idea about parent involvement. And, you know, so some background, I worked for the New York City Department of Education for 5 years in a technical support capacity. And so definitely not as a classroom teacher, but just being in that system for about 5 years. So there's some things that I saw in that space that really alarmed me. And one of the things, especially now being a parent, was just the lack of parental involvement, especially in regards to our Black and brown children. So like there would be moments where like there would be a suspension and the parent would only find out when the kid was like, yeah, I'm suspended, I'm not going to school this morning. And I'm like, wait, hold up. How the mom or the dad didn't know prior to the day that the child is not going to school? And so I feel like it's connected to this piece of just like, yeah, you know, she probably working 3 jobs. So, you know, like, you know, it's almost like it's our responsibility to parent for her or for him.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if there was anything to speak to that in terms of just like this idea that parents are not an asset to partner with, but more so someone just to notify.
Right. See, and that is a perfect example of a school that has a deficit mindset about that parent. Like, if a child is suspended, like you absolutely, I'm as a person that handles suspensions at my school, like the first person that I'm calling is your parent, and we're going to talk about the situation and talk about what happened, like why it got here. Like that suspension is not enacted if your parent does not know. Like you, like the first person that I'm talking to is your parent, because ultimately, like, yes, you're in my school for 9 hours a day, but your parent is the one that rears you and takes care of you. Like that is an absolute injustice if I'm over here, you know, dealing something with a child and I don't involve their parent. Like that's criminal. But that very often is what schools do, and they think like, his mama ain't around, I'm not gonna call, I'm just gonna suspend him. Okay, who is that child staying home with if I don't tell their parent about the suspension? But very often in my experience, I've seen the exact opposite with parents. Well, like they're helicopter parents in a lot of ways. Like I have parents that will call, text, show up, bird tweet, come to the school every single day. Like our parents go on field trips, they volunteer in classrooms. Like they're often, when I was in the classroom, like I had parents that would call me every single day. How's Johnny's reading level? What's he doing? Like I want to know. Like you have to have that level of communication with parents because they care. This is their child. Like they are their child's first teacher, and they're way more invested than you are. So schools definitely have to look at parents from that lens.
Wow.
That's good. So staying on the parent tip for a second, again, as a parent, I find that the whole idea of sending your child to school, especially in New York City, can be anxiety inducing. First of all, the application process is crazy. Just understanding district lines, the lottery, there's just a lot. And then just trying to figure out like this whole idea of what is a good school,
right?
Like, do you look at diversity? Are you looking at test scores? Are you looking at the culture? What do teachers say about the principal? And so do you have any advice to somebody who's just kind of in the game for parents who are just looking for a school? What metrics matter and what may not matter so much that we make a big deal about?
Well, I'm just going to be speaking as an educator and not as a parent, but I want to say to the parents that are in New York City, especially, and are trying to get their children into school for the first time, I feel for you because it actually is a terrifying process. And the idea of sending your child to be with a stranger for hours on end, like I'm sure that is anxiety producing. But there are definitely a lot of things that you can look at to make that process go a lot more smoothly. But really, I'd say, like, it depends on what are your values as a family. Like, what are you looking for your child's educational experience? Like, metrics, definitely you want to look at the school's report card. You want to see how they perform on state tests. What percentile are they in. You do want to look at distance from your school, because like how long will it take you to get your child? You want to look at what's the culture of the school. Like, what are their discipline policies? Like, are they excessive on suspensions? Are they excessive on certain things? Do you want a strict school? Do you want more of a, creative, flowy kind of school? Like, it's what are your values? What are you looking for your child, and what matters to you as a family? Does it matter how much time they're taking on homework? Does it matter how long they are in school for the day? There are charter schools that are in school, it's 9 hours. Then they have public schools that are in school for 5 or 6. Sometimes they're performing better. Sometimes they're performing worse. Like, it really is up to your values as a parent.
That's good. So it's less what is the best school and more what is the best fit.
Exactly. Like, what matters to you. And I tell parents all the time, you have to know your child to know what environment is going to be the best for them. Maybe it is a strict environment that's going to work for your child, or maybe it's not. Maybe it's a more creative Montessori type of environment that will work for your child. Looking at that child from that asset base of like, this child has a certain personality, they have certain bends, like what is the best fit, and then what matters to me for my child to get. Does it matter that they're in a small classroom? Does it matter that they're around a lot of friends so that they're being socialized? Like, what matters to you is the biggest thing.
That's good. And I feel the tension in that, because I do think that this is a moment where parents really want to like offload that responsibility and kind of outsource this idea of putting my child in a good environment. But I think this is what you're saying is just a place where it's like, look, we can't hang our brain up at the door when it comes to this decision. We really have to go hard and really understand and study our child to really know what would be the best fit for them.
Absolutely. Like, parents, the Bible requires that you train up a child.
Talk about it.
Like, bring that word in.
Okay.
Like, it is not ultimately, like, we're here to partner together, but it's not ultimately the school's responsibility to parent nor teach your child. Like, you are looking for the best service for your child. So you really have to do that research and know, like, what do I want my child to get out of this? What is the best fit for my child? And then from not dropping them off at the door and then that's it. No, I'm here daily. I'm asking questions daily. I want to know about his reading level. I want to know what you're reading in the classroom so I can read with him. How are you reading? How are you teaching it? I'm going to do that. And if it is that you do have a schedule where you work a little longer, I'm getting the tutor. I'm finding the auntie that works in schools and having him sit with that auntie. I'm doing a class observation. If I have a day off, like, I'm doing whatever it is to know, like, it's not just on the school. It's not just on the teachers. I, as a parent, it's my first responsibility, and God requires that of me.
That's good stuff.
I just felt encouraged right now. I've just been going through some things.
Need that.
The word
That's
will
good
do that
stuff.
to you.
So encouraged. Now, cities. The big thing in cities, over this last decade has been the charter school. And so I know a lot of people have no idea what a charter school is.
Absolutely.
And so can you break that down for people, just real basic, like what is a charter school and why should they be interested?
Sure. As someone who's worked in charter schools for about the last 5-6 years. So a charter school is basically a public school that has a separate charter. Under that charter, they just have a group of a body that governs their organization, and they have their charter sets specific rules for them. It sets their discipline practices, it sets their financial practices. That's all it is. It still falls under the Board of Education, but it is somewhat of a separate entity where they are able to make their own individual laws. There are individual charter schools where it's just like one school. They're independent. Then there are charter networks that run several schools, and they fall under that governing body, that group of schools.
Got you. Now, are there any intrinsic advantages or disadvantages to looking at a charter school versus a more traditional, like, public school?
Sure. I mean, with everything, there are advantages and disadvantages. I am a charter school proponent simply because I've worked in it and I've seen it work, but I also understand the critics that speak against charter schools. Some of the positive things that I've seen is with the structure, with the they have more like strict disciplinary practices. Like there is a lot of elimination of distractions, a lot of elimination of like unsafe things that happen in schools with behaviors that might distract children. So very often charter schools are outperforming their district counterparts because like scholars are more focused on the work in front of them as opposed to focus on other distracting things like fights and all that kind of stuff. On the flip side of that, like with charter schools being a lot more strict in their disciplinary practices, it's not for every child. Like there are a lot of suspensions. There are, students who are removed from the school because of smaller infractions. And it can be a lot on parents because it's like, okay, so my child got in trouble for this little thing, but that is a part of their behavior system. So, it does affect them. So like there are definitely pros and there are definitely cons. There are pros to district schools and there are cons to district schools. So everything has its good and bad.
No, that was great. Thanks for breaking that down. And just for the people, charter schools are free.
Absolutely free.
Okay. Dope. Appreciate it. I just feel like I'm in a college course right now.
Sorry, guys.
This is good. I need this.
Yeah.
One other thing that I was observing, so one of my other, being the technology person, I was also responsible for handing out technology and giving it to students who had a recommendation in like their IEP or just like, like they were diagnosed with a particular learning disability or something like that. And I would issue them, technology to assist with that. I am not a doctor, nor do I play one on the internet. But there were students that came in that, in my non-professional opinion, were just very in need of what I was giving them.
Right.
There were other students that I was just like, why am I giving you this? Like, you just seem, you were the kid in my class that was just wilding out, or just like, I almost like, is there an overdiagnosis happening in the not urban, but more minority context that is kind of overdiagnosing our kids as ADD or like, some of these other ADHD and things like that, when that's actually not what's happening?
Absolutely. And it goes back to that asset versus deficit mindset. Like if you don't understand that this child is just someone who like moves around, he's just playful, like that's what 5 and 4-year-olds do, like you will think like, oh my god, he's hyperactive, like have to get him some medication.
Right.
I'm just gonna go ahead on and say it. Education tends to be an area that is populated with white women. If you look at the demographics of education, very often teachers, principals, administrators in education are white women. Yeah. And I really support these women because I feel like you to take up the charge to be an educator is really a high calling. Yeah. So I admire them and I respect them for that. But on the flip side, if you have not been culturally trained, if you have not been given the tools to be culturally sensitive, to, understand that there are differences in cultures and respond to that in a way that is appropriate, you will very often lean towards this child having some sort of special need, or this child being emotionally disturbed, or this child being hyperactive, because you've never really been around a child that looks like this. Yeah. So there is definitely, based on those factors, a lot of overdiagnosis with scholars. Like everybody don't got ADHD. Like he had some sugar. He's fine. He'll be all right. He'll calm down in 2 minutes.
Man. I think that when we presented with a lot of these issues, it can be very overwhelming. And I know for a lot of our listeners who, are Christians, Bible believing, individuals, we really look at the gospel and we see like, man, we are all broken. We all fall short. Like we're all sinful. And so the playing field should be more even in light of the gospel. And so just for those people who, may not be in education, but they're at a church and they volunteer at the kids ministry, or they're just interacting with the children in their family, like in light of what we understand biblically in terms of how the gospel speaks to all of our brokenness, and a white child and a black child are both sinful before God, and in need of a savior. When we look at education, is there any participation that we can be encouraging from our ministry leaders, from the people, on the pulpit who are, we're just trying to champion justice and trying to champion equality? What are some ways that people can jump in and in light of what they understand theologically, they could do some kind of participation?
Absolutely. Well, there are a lot of factors to it, right? Like if you have a small child, or you have a niece or nephew, or the kids in your church's, children's ministry, like just talk to them. Like the major thing that I've learned in education over the years is you want to figure out what the problem is and how to solve it. Like ask the people who are affected by the problem. So ask the children who are in these schools, like, hey, what's going on? Like, what do you like about school? What don't you like about school? Like, what do you want to see happen? Like, what's going on? Talk to me. Like, just have a conversation with the children around you. Like, even that is getting involved. Even that has a major impact, because then they're like, I'm a person. I have an opinion. Like, I'm able to have a voice. Like, even that affirms and pushes children, and that small act can even change their interaction in education, and they can then advocate for themselves. I think also churches like definitely be praying for the children in schools, be praying for the educators. If you have educators in your midst, like definitely uplift them, give somebody a hug. I know if you know a teacher, give them a hug. Like they probably had a hard day, but just be actively praying. And then if you have the capacity, like go volunteers in schools. Like mentorship is huge. Like getting involved in a child's life, it really it's not just like a TV special. Like it really does make a difference when you're involved in the life of even one child. And then for people who are lawyers, people who are educators, like find out the policy. And back to like the parents who are trying to figure out what school to put their child in. Look up what's going on in your child's district. Research, find out who the superintendent is. Like find out what district your child is in. Know your child's district number. Like even just the power of research and knowledge. Like those are small ways that can transform a broken system.
Wow. What about those who might be in, your colleagues, the people who are educators as well, who might not be woke to this? Might be the first time that they're kind of hearing it broken down in this way. What is something that they can do? They're in the classroom every single day. They want to make sure that every day they're making an impact in addressing these, these large, just systematic problems. What are some practical things they could do, as a teacher, as an educator?
First thing, check yourself.
Before you wreck yourself.
Yourself or a whole child's life. Like just absolutely check yourself. In my experience as a dean and my interactions, like I have absolutely had to check myself in the way that I've talked to kids and the way that I've, meted out discipline. Because like, was that the best way? Was that loving discipline? Probably not. Wow. But, going back and reflecting on your practice and making sure like every action that you take, like, is it beyond reproach? Is it something that is empowering this child or disempowering this child?
That's good, man.
Yeah, and that's the reality that you have to wake up to as an educator, as someone involved in a child in any capacity. Every morning you have to go into that room with a new mindset and really just checking like, what am I thinking about the way that I'm doing? Because if I'm thinking correctly, then I'll act correctly. You'll say the right things, like out of a man's heart. What's the scripture?
Mouth, his heart speaks.
Out of his mouth, his heart speaks. Like when you are making sure that inside is right, like you're able to pour out the right things to children, and you'll have a better impact on them. So definitely check yourself first.
It reminds me of just Philippians chapter 2, where Paul is just a simple concept of putting the interests of others over yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because to me, it seems like a teacher can approach the situation as like, how do I can discipline this child and make myself feel better, or I can, come down heavy-handed and, maybe get some sort of happiness from that. But, am I having this child's interests at heart?
Absolutely.
And it's other-centered versus self-centered.
Yeah.
When you look at yourself as an educator, you have to see yourself as a servant. Like you absolutely have to, in order to deal with administration. Even though I am an administrator, I have my own administration I have to deal with parents who are yelling at you, to deal with a child who might be having a tantrum or having a bad day. Like you have to see yourself as a servant so that you respond in a way that is for their benefit and out of love.
That's incredible.
Good stuff.
So one of the things that I really want to talk about is this idea of the school to prison pipeline. It's a very scary word. I remember when I was first learning about it, it was just like, man, so like schools are designed for people to go to jail? And it's just like, man, like just kind of unpacking that. And so it's a really big idea. And so just let's start off just with on the surface, in your experience, do you believe the school to prison pipeline exists? What are some things that you've seen that kind of perpetuate this system of students having experiences in schools that almost set them up to be an inmate?
Yeah, I mean, the school to prison pipeline is absolutely a real thing, regardless of whether people feel it or not. Like it's absolutely there. One major way that happens is having actual police officers in schools that are the disciplinarians. Like if, there's a fight, the police are there. And if you're in middle school, high school, like they can cart you off to jail, like because they're the ones that are handling disciplinary matters. For the way that the state test is designed, for your score in third grade, the score that you get on that state test determines the prisons that they are building. Because if you have a lower score, they've said that this indicates that more often than not, you will be a high school dropout, and that will lead to criminality, and then that will lead to your being in prison.
Wow.
A lot of the disciplinary systems are disproportionately pushed towards Black and brown children being put into the criminal justice system. Black girls are suspended at double rates versus white girls. Wow. Small infractions that a white boy may get away with, a Black child would be suspended and penalized double the amount that white child would. So there are definitely a lot of bends that push Black and brown children toward criminalization and lead up to that school to prison pipeline.
Wow.
My goodness. Now, Lourdes, you are a dean, correct?
I'm a dean.
Okay. So in my experience in the school system, the dean and in my, just hearing other people's experiences too, like the dean is like the get out of jail free card for teachers in a sense. So what I've seen is almost like there are students and it's like, as soon as they do like one little joint, it's like, I'm up, dean, and they come and they just kind of take them. And so being a dean, just kind of wanted to hear your experiences in like, do you feel like teachers are in a position to like properly understand the behavior? Like, are they tripping, or like are the kids just wilding out all the time, or is it that the teachers are just not able to deal with like minority culture? Is it a mix of both? Because I just see a lot of just outsourcing of just conversations that could have been had to the dean.
You got me all in my feelings right now, because like that is my like whole experience with education. So it's a mix of all of those factors. As a dean, like I handle the behavior situations. Like if there is a large behavior infraction, like I'm the one that comes and handles like the consequencing of that, and also the de-escalation of a situation. So within my training, like our first response is to come see what's going on, de-escalate the situation, and ultimately my major goal is to get that child back into the classroom as long as it's safe for the child and for everyone else. Very often there are teachers who do outsource to the dean, because it's like, if I am of a majority culture and I've never worked with students who are from different backgrounds, and I don't understand that when Johnny is, standing up or when Johnny's walking closer to me, it does not mean that Johnny's being aggressive towards me. It means that Johnny has feelings and he's a person. So like you can talk to Johnny and tell him to sit down, and Johnny will probably sit down if you tell him in the right way. In my experience, I've had teachers who get scared because there's this large Black boy that's walking towards me. I don't know how to handle this. I I don't want it to get crazy. I'm just gonna call Dean. She can handle it. Oh, she black. She know how to talk to them. Like she'll get him down. A lot of times deans tend to be men and women of color, because there's the assumption that the culture dean or the behavior dean, if they're black, like they can talk to those kids, they can get them back on track.
Wow.
To combat that, like I am in my role is not just to deal with behavior, it's to train teachers on their mindset of how they view black and brown children.
Let's go.
And then what you do in response to behavior. Like, would you respond to Jaquez the way that you would Jamie if it were a different setting?
Wow. Yeah.
Like, why are you giving Jaquez consequences, but you're not giving Janessa consequences? Like, there are mindset things. There are a lot of internal biases that you have to work through. And once you know those, like, you'll understand why this situation makes you as upset as it does. Because Johnny yelled does not mean that you need to call the dean. Like, talk to Johnny, ask him, hey, are you okay? And then figure out what's going on. From there, mitigate it, work it out yourself. But yeah, teachers definitely need that training in order to do that.
It seems to parallel what's happening with police.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow. Yeah, that's all I was hearing the whole time.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like,
Absolutely. So with the school to prison pipeline, I don't know if it's that the way that children are treated in schools because of this affects the culture, or if the culture affects the way that children are treated in schools.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what comes first. But if you do have a sense where children are policed in schools, or if there is a over penalization of black and brown children, like, that definitely directly mirrors what's happening in society with instances of police brutality, of black and brown children being able to be killed because they're playing with toy guns, or black men being shot on the street because they were walking, or when they had their hands up. Like, they're definitely, the two mirror one another. So the problems that we're seeing in society are direct correlations to the school to prison pipeline. Like, the way that you view black and brown children, the way that police view black and brown children, the way that black and brown people are just portrayed in the media, like, it absolutely will impact every decision, every move that is made around schools, or any system that touches black and brown people. So there definitely are far-reaching implications with that school to prison pipeline. There's a lot of, like, negative choices that are made because of the ways that black and brown people are viewed in society.
Yeah, and it feels like school is a place where people go to learn, not just in terms of their education, but also the way they're treated, right?
Absolutely.
And the way they learn to treat others in a negative way as well.
Yeah, the biggest way that you learn to view yourself is in the way other people speak to you, and how people speak about you.
Yeah.
It's like the language that you're using towards me. Like, if you feel like it's okay to talk to me like this, or talk about me like this, like, that impacts my sense of self.
Absolutely.
And I'm the narrative that you're using around me is the narrative I now use in my mind. So if I am constantly being berated, or if I am constantly being called stupid, or if I'm constantly being referred to as less than, or even using terms like impoverished, like, if this is constantly the narrative that I'm hearing, it's the one that I'll take on, and it's the one that I will project into the world. If there's a student who is always getting in trouble, and they're the one that the teacher always penalizes, or their name is always called in some negative light, they will then internalize that and act that out. They will internalize, oh, I'm the bad kid, I'm the stupid kid. And they will make choices from that place, because that has shaped their sense of self and their identity.
Wow.
That's powerful.
I think, Lourdes, you touched on, so as we talk about the school to prison pipeline, I guess, as how far reaching it is, and how it could even, it travels with them post school. You talked about how it is an environment where there's police officers in the building, and that automatically parallels, this almost like police state that we have in the city. And so it's just like, okay, I'm in trouble, I'm going to get carted off by a police officer, in the same way that we see a lot of black and brown young teenagers carted off by police officers.
Right.
One of the things that is really controversial, and it's something I know you deal with a lot, is suspension. One thing I didn't know was there are hearings. Like, you go to court sometimes when there's a suspension, and I never understood, like, why is a kid before a judge when it comes to a suspension?
Yeah. Well, thankfully, I work in elementary school, so we don't have hearings in elementary school. Like, I guess I'm judge and jury when it comes to suspensions.
Yeah.
But as an organization, we are really trying to limit the number of suspensions that are even meted out. Like, is this suspension worthy? Like, there are tiers of behaviors that fall under a suspension. Unfortunately, very often, students are suspended and penalized for really small infractions, and they are then having to go to these court hearings and stand before a judge, and they are given 5 week-long, month-long suspensions.
Like prison sentences.
Yeah, prison sentences.
Wow,
and then they cannot return to the school until their parent comes
They're
with
on
them.
house arrest.
Exactly. And then the parent isn't informed, so the parent doesn't even know this is happening. So I can't come to the school and advocate for my child. Y'all didn't even tell me that my child was being suspended. I wasn't involved in this process. So there's just like all these concentric circles that are happening around students being criminalized. And I know in my role in like suspending scholars, like I really try to think about like, does this amount to suspension? Like, do we really have to suspend them? And I've had instances where I've had teachers like outcrying for the child to be suspended. And it's like, no, like that wasn't worth a suspension. Like what's more important? You being vindicated right now or this child learning? Like, we have to pick, from that sense of service, like what is best for this child? His not being here for 5 days, like is that really gonna benefit him and his family? Or is it you swallowing this one, us having a reparative conversation and moving on and getting him back in class? Like, is that what's gonna be more impactful?
Yeah, it really mirrors the issue we have in prisons. Like, are we really rehabbing, or are we just punishing?
Absolutely.
And it's crazy that our kids, even at the youngest of ages, are experiencing that lack of attention in terms of looking to create positive behaviors versus just making it sting and making them feel punished. Yeah, that's really unfortunate.
I don't know if it's the mindset that says if I punish you as hard as you can, you will reform, versus but does that really work?
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
Doesn't.
Yeah. So I don't know. Would you say what's fueling that is it more just an innocent, faulty sense of justice, or is it like malpractice in the sense that like there's some like systemic evils involved, maybe some racism? Like, what do you feel like, or is it just like a maybe an archaic view of justice that's still in the system that needs to be kind of rebutted?
I mean,
any thoughts on that at all?
Ultimately, every problem in society points back to some form of sin.
Right.
Like, there definitely are massive evils that are happening in the education system. Like, people are making choices on children's lives based off of racism, based off of prejudice, based off of evil views.
Yeah.
Betsy DeVos, like the choices that she's making in education, it's like, girl, really? Like, do you care about people? You care about humans? Like, you obviously don't. If this is the way that you think about people and these are then the choices, like, there are absolutely systemic evils at play. The way to combat that then is like, as a church, like, we have to be praying, but we really need to be thinking about everything that we think. Before I make any decision before a child, why am I making this decision? Why am I talking to this child like this? Why am I giving this child a consequence? Why? Like, what is behind my doing this? Is this coming from, stuff that I've seen before? Is this coming from the culture? Or am I making the best choice? And again, I have not been perfect in this. Like I come from a very strict West Indian background. We didn't play. Like, you speak when you're spoken to. Like, that's how I've been raised, and that's how I've been educated. That's how I've been socialized. And I've brought a lot of that into my education practice. But I've had to check myself, like, why? Like, why do black people beat their kids more than any other? It's like, is that from slavery? Is that from somewhere else? Like, why is that? Like,
Lord, stop. Stop right now.
like, would I be yelling at a white child like this? Like, would I go off in this?
Tag.
Yo, she's taking it to another level right now.
Yes.
So, if it were like, if Blue Ivy were in my class, would I respond this way? So I really
I'd be terrified to even talk to her.
right. It's like I'm gonna bite my tongue. So but every child needs to be treated like Blue Ivy because like every child has that.
Come on,
that
gospel.
inherent worth. So always thinking about like, why am I making the choices that I'm making?
Yeah, and I'll say it makes me think about outside, again, like outside of, this context, we're talking about children and educators. How do I treat the people in my life? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? like, yeah, just do I hold a heavy-handed kind of expectation on people?
Absolutely. I have the heaviest hand. Like, I have a very stringent sense of right and wrong. Like, if you do that, like, that's wrong. If you do that, it's right. But again, that's the law versus grace. Like, are we bringing in that truth and love at the same time?
That's
when
a good
we're
way to
Like,
look at
how restorative are my responses to
exactly
people who
like,
come at me or have issues with me? Like,
how quick am I to respond and give forgiveness and give grace versus just lay down the law?
Wow.
That's good.
Going back to just kind of, again, the pipeline and how, kids kind of get like junior incarcerated in schools. One thing that I always heard about, but I couldn't articulate, what is a permanent record? I would always hear teachers be like, yo, this is going on your, and I was like, is this like when you fill out the job application and you got to say if you was in jail, you had like an infraction, like, yo, this is on you. We could find this in your background check. This is on your permanent. Like, how does that, like, are permanent records ever like subpoenaed? Is that ever affect a child? Like, if there's something on his permanent record that would affect them in like their adult life? Like, I'm always I don't even know what's in my permanent record right now.
Where is my permanent record?
I forgot about
where
that.
is it?
Yeah.
But it was always this threat when I was in school. Like, yo, your permanent record. I was like, it's permanent.
Yeah, I just care about the Lance Book of Life.
Permanent record.
Right.
Hashtag the real permanent record.
Right. Yeah, permanent records are not actually permanent. They
Misnomer.
misnomer.
It's a scare tactic, is that it?
Yeah, it's total scare tactic in a lot of ways. Like, like, there are records that follow you up to a certain point.
Okay.
But like your elementary school permanent record doesn't necessarily affect you at 36. So it's not, there are.
Thanks for clarifying that.
There are components that go with you, like IQ testing and different things like that. But if you were suspended in first grade, it does not, affect your job performance.
Apparently, third grade test scores do follow you.
They do, like, they absolutely do. So there are different, like, you're tracked in certain ways, but like, your permanent record can be sealed. If it is subpoenaed, like if there is an ACS case or there is a criminal case against a child, like, yes, they will pull their school records. If the child moves to another school, like the school will send the information that they have on the child. But thankfully, like, there is redemption within permanent records.
Praise
like,
the Lord.
Yes, like, it doesn't follow you always.
Sweet redemption.
Right.
Jesus paid for my permanent record, y'all.
But see, even that
Sure did.
language that we use towards children of threatening them, like, this is going to go down on your permanent record.
Permanently.
Like, that goes back to the criminalization of, like, that fear tactic of, like, I'm always going to be punished. I can't make a mistake at 7 because it's going to affect me when I'm 17. I can't, I can't ever do anything wrong because it's always going to follow me. I'm never going to be able to get out of the under, this type of stigma.
The last thing I kind of want to touch on is just like with this whole pipeline thing is, are there anything visually or aesthetically that has also played into this? Like, are schools designed, the way the classrooms are, the way the rooms are set up, the building itself, or just what we are championing and putting in the classrooms? Are there things in there that we are doing and it's actually helping to perpetuate this pipeline? Or are we designing, even from an architectural standpoint, or even for how we decorate, are we doing things in a way that kind of like, man, we're making this too prison-like?
Right. I mean, think about the aesthetic spaces that you love to be in as an adult and the aesthetic spaces that make you more productive and make you feel like I'm a creative.
Oh my gosh.
That's
big.
Yeah, the elements that are in that. Like there's a lot of light.
Yeah.
There's usually a lot of space.
Yeah.
There's natural lighting. There are windows. There,
Exposed brick.
Exactly. Like there are definitely aesthetic elements that push you as a creative as an adult.
Yeah.
So think back to your elementary school experience when you were in school.
Not that.
Yeah.
No
What did you
WeWork
get?
up in there.
No, there was no working happening. Like it did not feel like a creative, free flowing space. Like so now, like there are schools that are definitely trying to push like having larger windows, having more lighting, making sure that the hallways are bright and that they're pretty and that bulletin boards are neat and the hallways are neat and clean and everything that is in there. There's a broken window theory that says that if you see one small broken window, that will propel you to want to not care about your neighborhood, and it will cause more damage in the long run because you'll think like, oh, if there's a broken window here, no one cares about this, so it's okay if I mess it up. And that impacts schools. So if there's trash on the ground, if there's one small piece of trash on the ground, that will encourage other people to put more trash on the ground. If there are ripped up textbooks, oh, I can rip up my textbook because she doesn't care enough to give me a textbook that all the pages are intact. It doesn't matter.
Wow.
They don't care enough to, actually like cut the paper right on the bulletin board. Like nobody cares about the way that this looks. So nobody cares about my education. So I don't care about it. And it just propels and there's this cycle that happens. So definitely like making sure that schools are pretty and they're clean and they're aesthetically pleasing so that creative juices can flow.
And identify with all that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Danny, anything you could say as a creative to that, man?
Yeah, I mean, I had a WeWork office for some time, and part of the reason why is because when you get into that specific space, it's inducive toward creativity or productivity, and it centers your mind. I mean, it's a well-known thing that if you're an entrepreneur or even creative in any way, that your space directly influences like your productivity, creativity. Like if you have cluttered spaces or it's like messy or dirty, like it's a lot harder to just have a clarity in thought. So I mean, it's absolutely true.
And I know I said this was gonna be the last thing, but another thing that I see,
you answered all his deep dark questions about
in the
education.
parallel, right? Because all these things, the school to prison pipeline, again, this huge systemic issue. No way we're gonna exhaust everything here, but just seeing things we do in the beginning show up at the end. And so like one other thing that I was always curious about is why is there such tyranny around the bathroom? It feels like jail. Like why can't kids use the bathroom?
I mean, at least, I know
Some
in high
things
school,
go
some
down
stuff
the
went
bathroom.
down in the
Yeah.
bathroom.
Some things go down.
Things go down the
Things
bathroom.
go down.
True. Traffic wise. But like I've seen teachers like, no, you can't go to the bathroom until you da. Why can't? That's bodily.
Yeah. And again, I'm not perfect here. Like I've definitely made
So this is like I gotta repent over some of this stuff too. Like you're coming for my soul right now, but
I got some students I need to apologize.
Yeah, no, I've been a toilet tyrant in my education career.
that's what they call them. Toilet tyrants? Okay.
Because the bathroom is that one unmanned place. I can't supervise what happens in the bathroom, and crazy stuff happens in the bathroom. I've seen like kids write on the walls. There's cursing. There's like we've had explosions where kids have stuffed tissue in the toilet, and it's like, oh, come on, guys, just go to the bathroom. But a lot of times it's a power thing. Or like, no, I don't want to let you out here because I'm doing something. I'm teaching right now. I'm in control. I'm setting what's happening here, and you're interrupting the flow of control. So I'm gonna play this control factor. Like you are not gonna go to the bathroom until you do X, Y, and Z. And once you've met that, okay, go ahead because you've satisfied the conditions of my control. So yeah, the bathroom, there's a lot to it. I really now on the other side as an administrator, I'm really trying to like tell folks like just let them go to the bathroom because I
That's
really
what's up,
like
man. Shout out to repentance.
Yeah.
Mad vulnerability.
But yeah, no, it's many years in this education thing has pushed me to rethink a lot of the decisions that I've made. But yeah, the bathroom it's a touchy subject.
Yeah, but it reminds me of just like a prison guard who will want to maintain power and will prevent a inmate from doing something that he just has to do.
Yes.
so,
We try to say like to do everything purpose over power. Because,
That's good.
Yeah, very very often it's all a power move. Everything that you do in the classroom is it's a total power move.
Yeah.
But what is the purpose that you're doing this? Is it just to make you feel better and assuage your confidence and make you feel like you're the tough guy, you're the one in control? Or is it for the best interests of the child?
I mean, in life, purpose or power. You know, a lot of times
I'm taking that home.
A lot of times we do things and make decisions so that we look or feel or seem a certain way. And you know, dang. So it takes a lot of humility. I'm just thinking about the humility it takes to be a teacher, to kind of have to, you know, or not just humility, but it's like what's the word? Meekness.
Yeah.
You know, to have to kind of absorb the blows and the hits, and let your pride be, you know, destroyed, for the well-being of someone else.
Yo, sometimes you literally get physical blows and hits.
Yeah.
And like,
My goodness.
I remember some of those stories you told.
Yeah, it's crazy. There definitely are instances of violence, but even in that, like if you have a child that is doing something that is outside of your control, or they're exerting their power in the classroom, like taking that moment and taking a deep breath and like, what is the best way to respond in this situation for to preserve the imago Dei of that child and for everyone around them, and like not to perpetuate certain stereotypes.
Yeah. Even if it means you might look like you took a L and you don't have the established power.
Yeah, I'm a tyrant, guys. I'm an absolute like in all of my
God's
education
working on
studies. He's working. Like, everybody knows.
Yo, it's not an easy job.
It's
man.
not. Miss
It's not an
Branch
easy
does not
job.
play.
It's
Like
not an easy job.
there are no games played, and I definitely do believe in strictness. I definitely do believe in children following rules and you know, they're being disciplined and all of that. But also checking like, what is the heart behind your discipline? Like why are you going this hard?
Right.
It's good. So just going back to the school to prison pipeline for a second. Do you have any thoughts on how that could be like fought against? Like what are is there any way that, I don't know, maybe teachers, or not just teachers, but just educators or just the entire education system can fight against that? Or have you seen any like desire for the education to fight against that? Or do they not really care? What's your vibe on that? Because I don't know much about it, but
there's definitely an issue where schools and the educators are trying to combat that notion. It is very broad and it is very systemic. So it like the education system in America is broken, and it has been broken since its inception. The purpose of education in America was not ever meant to educate kids. It was meant to house immigrants and get them off of the streets so that they wouldn't be walking around the streets.
Wow.
oh,
They had somewhere to
that.
go. Like that is the history of education in America, and especially in New York. So it has been broken since its inception. Now, there are schools that are trying to make sure like we are pushing rigorous curriculum and we are, you know, setting schools up in a way that is fostering education and fostering academic progress for Black and brown children. But there definitely are a lot of factors that go into it. It's how much funding is that school getting? Are they receiving private donorship? Do they have the right curriculum? Like, you know, all of that matters. Like there's a lot that goes into combating that.
That's what's up. Well, thank you for that. Wow. That's really good information for our educators and people in school spaces and things like that. Brothers, sisters, there's no way for us to answer every single piece of this. This is a very huge topic. It definitely leaves room for more conversation on this, something we may have to revisit in the future. I do encourage you guys to get out there, Google School to Prison Pipeline, read up on it, research. There's a lot of good information out there. And if you are an educator or you're a parent and you're really invested in children's lives, this is something you have to understand, and this is something you have to get active about. Lourdes the Principal.
AKA
You took
the
us to
woman with
school.
principle.
Yeah, absolutely.
You took us to school today.
Yeah, she did.
Thank you so much for being on the show and just sharing this information, just sharing your heart and your years of experience with us. For those of us here at City Image, we hope that this information was really good for you guys.
Yeah.
Please continue to like, share, comment.
Subscribe.
All that. Facebook.
Facebook. Yeah, we on Facebook. You know what I'm saying? The City Image.
Yeah.
On Twitter, The City Image. Email us at cityimagepodcast@gmail.com.
We on YouTube somewhere.
Yeah, you gotta Google real
Instagram.
hard.
We trying to figure that out. We got you.
City Image is the best.
Oh, there you
That's
go.
the new drop.
Cutting that out. Cutting it out.
That's
That's
what's
it.
up.
All right, guys, enjoy. Peace.
Thanks.
Bye.